Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're continuing with Hilchot of Kiddush. In Siman Resh Petet Tziv Bet, we're talking about in a place where there's no wine. So are you allowed to make Kiddush on other liquids? So here the David Yosef brings down, there's a machloket rishonim, are you allowed to make Kiddush, for example, on beer, if there's no wine, and the beer is considered Chamar Medina. Chamar Medina means that the beer is considered a type of a beverage which is very common in the place, and therefore it's very chashuv, just like the beer. And it says over here, to do with the Kiddush of Shabbat nighttime, we are posek like the Sovrim, that you cannot make it on beer, but rather you have to make it on wine. And therefore, if you do not have wine, he says you don't do it on another liquid, but rather you do it on the bread. And even if you do not have, bread, you do not do it on beer, but rather you have the kavanah to be the chovah, the mitzvah kiddush, and tefillah. So therefore it comes out that on the nighttime it is very stringent. In the nighttime it's basically wine. If there's no wine, it's bread. And if there's no bread and no wine, you're doing it on the kiddush and the tefillah. There's nothing else. That is going to be on Shabbat night. During the daytime of Shachrit in the morning, so if you cannot find wine or you cannot drink the wine for whatever reason, so then you're allowed to do it on Chamar Medina. Right? So he says why? Because if you're not going to do it on wine, what are you going to do it on? You want to do it on the bread. But 1 second, in the morning, there's no extra part of the Kiddush. In the morning, there's only just the Borei Pri Gefen on wine. If there's no wine and you're making it on bread, what are you just saying? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So how do you see that you're doing Kiddush? There's no Kiddush. You're just taking a piece of bread, saying Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and now you're doing Kiddush. What Kiddush? There's nothing which is recognizable. In the nighttime, right, if you're doing it on the bread, so you're right, you're not going to say Borei Pri Gefen because there's no wine, but you would say Hamotzi, but you're still saying the Kiddush part, which is the Bracha Mekadesh Shabbat. So it's recognizable that you're doing Kiddush, but on Shabbat morning, it's not recognizable that you're doing Kiddush, and therefore what happens is that if you do not have wine, you do it on Chamar Medina. And if you do not have Chamar Medina, so for example, beer is Chamar Medina. But what happens if a person doesn't have no wine and no beer? Can he make it, let's say, on apple juice? Can he make it on orange juice? Can he make it on another type? So he says here, if you do not have Chamar Medina, you're allowed to make on also another liquid which is not going to be Chamar Medina, in order that there should be a hayaker, a recognition, right? Something recognizable that you're doing it for Kavod Shabbat, and you're going to drink the majority of a Revit and not more, right? And therefore that's what you're going to do on Shabbat morning. Now this is only to do with Shabbat morning. On Motzei Shabbat, for Havdalah, you could only use Chamar Medina. You cannot use another liquid. So one more time. On the nighttime, wine. If there's no wine, bread. If there's no bread, no wine, on the tefillah. Shabbat morning, you do it on wine. If there's no wine, Chamar Medina. If there's no Chamar Medina, even any other liquid. As long as you're not doing it on the bread. Because you cannot do it on the bread, it's not recognizable. On Havdalah, you must use Chamar Medina. Now everything here that we're talking about is only going to be if the wine is not common, right? Which means it's not found, right? But if there is wine, so you have to use the wine. And that's why it's very, very important. And there it says, Minhag kama kilot kodesh in the morning, to use mashke charif, for example, whiskey or cognac or arak or beer, right? And even if there is wine. So he says a few acharonim, they brought down different reasons to be mekel. However, though, even according to those reasons, it's still always better to use the wine. Nevertheless, if you are going to come and use a mashke charif, for example, whiskey or other things, so you have to have a cup which holds a revi'it, and after making the shakol, you have to drink the majority of a revi'it, and you have to drink it in one shot, just like the normal circumstances. So therefore, that's going to be very, very difficult to come. Because first of all, you can't just come and take a shot glass. You're going to need a 3-ounce shot glass in order to make the kiddush, and then you would have to drink the majority, right, of the revit over there, right, which is melo lugmav, which is the majority of revit, in order to be tzedek chovah. So it's very, very important to do the halachot of kiddush at nighttime, morning, and havdalah.